Hey, thanks for checking in. I'm glad you're here. This is Glenn Livers. Today we're going to talk about hooking the reader for short stories and novels. Getting those first lines and first paragraphs right, hugely important. I'm going to get into how a few other writers have approached this and the things that I think are important. Let's just get right into it. I think uh, we used to have a situation where readers didn't consume media all day long. And now they do. People are watching TV, YouTubing, so forth, every day, all the time. And how has that affected short story writing? I think in some ways it has affected short story writing and novels and so forth. Let's just call it story writing. And I think that television, let's just use that example, the very first minute of any film or series conveys so much information, background information and so forth. It tells people so much. It's a fast start. And I think the most important thing that it says that media tends to say is something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. It's going to change. Everything's going to change for this person or that person. Change is happening. And, you know, or if it's of a comedy, there's sort of a little buffoonery going on where they're introducing you to characters. But let's get into it. So what does that mean for story writing? Um, well, let's look at the way that Toole started Confederacy of Dunces. This is it's a comedy. Everybody knows this book. It's fantastic. The very beginning of the book of this particular first paragraph, I want you to understand that you can't have too much description. You have to work it in. Toole did this masterfully, but maybe a little more quickly. This is a comedy, so he just pushed a lot of information in here. Excuse me, let me read it. And also there's this facade that we're talking about a hunting cap, but if you pay attention, he's just using this hunting cap as a means to inform you as the reader, or, the reader, information about the character. A green hunting cap squeezed the top of the fleshy balloon of a head. The green ear flaps full of large ears and uncut hair, and the fine bristles that grew in the ears themselves stuck out on either side like turn signals indicating two directions at once. Full, pursed lips protruded beneath the bushy black mustache, and at their corners sank into little folds filled with disapproval and potato chip crumbs. In the shadow under the green visor of the cap, Ignatius J. Riley's supercilious blue and yellow eyes looked down upon the other people waiting under the clock at the D.H. Holmes department store, studying the crowd of people for signs of bad taste in dress. Several of the outfits, Ignatius noticed, were new enough and expensive enough to be properly considered offenses against taste and decency. Possessing of anything new or expensive only reflected a person's lack of theology and geometry. It could even cast doubts upon one's soul. What has Toole done here? Wow, it's interesting. So what are we looking at? The buffoon of a man, this big fleshy head and turn signals, the ear sticking out and nonsense, and he's looking down, supercilious with his, he's looking down upon other people with his supercilious blue and yellow eyes. Um, who is this guy to be looking down upon other people? And, why is he dressed in such a buffoonery way if he's inside of the department store? And we get enough information to realize we're dealing with a big personality, with something's going to happen. This guy, he's going to do something. He's not just there, and he's judging. He's kind of judging me because I'm that way. I look at people's purchases sometimes and I think, man, that is dumb. Why would people spend money on that kind of stuff? You know, um, possessing of anything new or expensive only reflects a person's lack of theology and geometry. It could even cast doubts upon one's soul. That's kind of deep, right? And we're all like that. As readers, we're all like that. We all have this little tiny voice inside. We don't talk about it, but it kind of judges what people are buying, right? And I'm a minimalist. But I still, that's where I'm at. I still have that that feeling. So I know that a lot of people do. The description of the character is intertwined in the narrative. So in this way, there's this exposition of sorts right off the bat in this story. Toole tells us kind of what the person looks like, what their demeanor is, that they're up to something, and we want to kind of know what that is. All right. And I think this is what we have to, you know, we need surprise, we need curiosity. Oh, that's the word, curiosity. You have to, the reader has to be curious, and you're not going to get the reader to be curious without a little ambiguity. Because if you tell the reader too much information in the first paragraph and you sum up the situation, okay, Joe is divorced and now he's looking for a new wife and he's getting ready to go on his first date, and let's go with him. That's cool, but if you wrap it up too nicely, it's boring. And you want the reader to sort of come to the story. So you don't want to give the reader too much information. You want the reader to want to seek out information. You want the reader to come to your story and look for the, you know, the denouement of whatever it is that you gave them that put them out of balance as a reader. They want to know what happens to somebody. Why did somebody do something? And so there's a lot of different ways to do this. We can foreshadow. We can use omens. We can assure the reader that this day is unlike any other day for this particular character. And, you know, Joe went to St. Mary's Hospital this morning and had his leg amputated. And now he's worried about what his wife is going to think and how that's going to affect the families and so forth. Well, we know that Joe, in this case, is a day like no other day in his life. Now, of course, you're going to embellish and make it interesting in its language and exhilarating and exciting for the reader and arouse their curiosity. But the fact is, it's change. Something's changing. Things are happening, and it's unlike anything that's ever happened to the character before. And I think those sort of big moments are important for stories now. Even if you are going to start a story that has a lot of tender details and nuances, and this is where your heart as a writer is taking you, you're going to want to start the story somewhat differently in that you're going to start out on your character's worst day and then start healing from there. Something's going to happen, but when you very first bring the reader to introduce the reader to what's going on in the world that you've created, you need to do that in such a way that the reader becomes curious about the world that you created. Okay? Let's look at Camus, Albert Camus, his story, The Stranger. Here we start out, there's ambiguity about a very important issue we can all relate to. And we want to know what's going to happen because we don't know even whether this guy is nice or not nice. All right, well, let me read the paragraph. It's really short. Mother died today, or maybe yesterday. I don't know. I had a telegram from the home. Mother passed away. Funeral tomorrow. Yours sincerely. That doesn't mean anything. It may have been yesterday. Okay, as readers, we have a feeling in our heart when somebody says that their mother died. And we don't know whether to, how, you know, isn't it weird? You got to think to yourself in real life, how am I going to address this? What should I say? Oh, well, she was, really up there. She lived a long, full life. Or I'm glad, to have her out of your life because she was nothing but a horrible, succubus. Um, we all have something to say about it. And, 95% of the time, it's a bad thing. It's she was 90 and she was taken too soon. We love our mothers. So I think we want to know, what does this character think about this? Is he happy? Is he sad? Did she die today? Did she die yesterday? How did she die? Who is this woman? Oh, what the hell's going on? And it's kind of cool what Camus did here. I would still say this is kind of a slow start for a story, right? But of course, The Stranger, a huge story, very, very popular. So, it hooked a lot of readers, and maybe they were readers from a little bit of a different time, but uh, there's enough ambiguity there to pique the curiosity and make you wonder what's happening. How should I feel about this? Am I happy? Am I sad? I got to find out. I mean, what the hell? Who is this lady? That you got to know, right? Um, but change. Something's changed, right? Camus is explaining that a major event has changed. It's an event that only happens once in your life. And so there's that. Let's look at how Hemingway handled change. And in A Farewell to Arms, he starts out with all, Hemingway, all the symbolism and everything, but this is a setting reflecting the lives of the characters. There's change happening. The setting is revealing that there's change happening, and we want to know how we need to feel about it. We still don't know. Well, let me read it, okay? In the late summer of that year, we lived in a house in a village that looked across the river and plain to the mountains. In the bed of the river, there were pebbles and boulders, dry and white in the sun, and the water was clear and swiftly moving and blue in the channels. Troops went by the house and down the road, and the dust they raised powdered the leaves of the trees. The trunks of the trees were too dusty, and the leaves fell early that year. And we saw troops marching along the road, and the dust rising, and leaves stirred by the breeze falling, and the soldiers marching, and afterward the road bare and white except for the leaves. So there's the change, soldiers marching, change, soldiers marching, change. We know that the setting itself is reflecting, the leaves are falling. It's only summer, so something is happening. And I think, in a way, Hemingway's trading on his name at this point. Farewell to Arms is a great, obviously a great story. He could start a little slower and people would still engage. And so there's a little bit more symbolism maybe pushed in here. But what we do know is that he still started it out to hook the reader in a masterful way that tells the reader something's happening. We don't know if the people survive, if they don't survive, who the soldiers are. Are they friends of the people in the house? Are they not? There's change going on, obviously, from all directions, but what does it mean? And I think you want to know. So that's how Hemingway did it. Something good's going to come, right? Something good is going to come is a great way to hook the reader. So you tell the reader something terrible happened, but I think something's going to happen that's good. There's a certain reader for everything. Some readers, they kind of want everything's great, but something bad's going to happen. Joe's going to get knocked off his high horse, right? But then there's, Joe's down in the dumps and something great's going to happen to Joe. That change is interesting. Let's look at On the Road, Jack Kerouac. Okay, so we all know this. I won't even get into his life has changed. And I first met Dean not long after my wife and I split up. I had just gotten over a serious illness that I won't bother to talk about, except that it had something to do with the miserably weary split up and my feelings that everything was dead. With the coming of Dean Moriarty began the part of my life you could call my life on the road. Okay, isn't that cheerful in a way? I mean, obviously, my life was dead. That's terrible. But there's this little door that opens. The part of my life you could call my life on the road. Well, where do you go after dead, right? You got to go up. And so he said, at my lowest low, when I was feeling dead, I met Dean, and Dean and I basically began our life on the road. So neat. That wasn't the whole paragraph. I'm sure you read the book. But what we do know is something's going to happen. Something is going to change. This major breakup, my wife and I split, miserable and weary, right? Feelings that everything was dead. My life has plummeted, and now I'm going to try and salvage something. All right, so we all know our life goes up and down. We relate to that, and I think in some ways, those first paragraphs, if you can, you want to show but not tell, but you have to give people enough to make them interested, and so in this way, he has done a little bit of telling, but he's got the reader hooked because they want to know, how is your life different? Who's Dean? What's going to happen? And there's change happening, right? And it's kind of an omen, I think, in a way. Something is dying. I felt I was dead. And then now something new is happening. That dying part, I think, foreshadows a little bit that not everything is what it seems later on in the book. Okay, so let's look at the way Vladimir Nabokov approached his most famous novel, Lolita. What he did here is kind of amazing. And I don't know that you can repeat it. I don't know that I've ever seen it done this well. But what he's done, well, let me read the first little bit here. So let me just say the book itself has a false forward, right? And then there's the opening of the real part of the book, if you want to call it that. And that's where I'm going to start. Lolita, light of my life, fire of my loins, my sin, my soul, Lolita. The tip of the tongue taking a trip of 3 steps down the palate to tap at 3 on the teeth, Lolita. I'll stop. Nobody reads this without being conscious of their tongue in their mouth. The way that your tongue keeps hitting the T's and then takes that tip of the tongue, taking a trip of 3 steps down the palate to tap at 3 on the teeth. Lolita. You just do that. You think to yourself, this person, the speaker, is telling me as the reader what that's like, and something happens. As soon as you become conscious of that act of taking your tongue 3 steps down the palate and you sound it out, or even just imagine it, but I think most of us do it, even if under our breath, we just can't help ourselves. Suddenly we are in the mindset of the speaker. Suddenly we are on that. We're there with him, and we've made a connection with the character. The character is doing the same thing that we're doing. We're doing it. We're thinking about it. I did it. It's weird, but cool. And a very, very interesting way to hook the reader, to put the reader on that same step, to get the reader to imagine or do something with the speaker. Weird, but cool. I will say that's a masterpiece of a book. Look, the book was written a long time ago. People weren't gross back then. The subject matter is controversial and disturbing, but it's not written in a way that is super graphic and, you know, makes you want to go throw up or something. It is a very interesting piece full of prose, definitely a masterpiece, one of the best written things that I've ever read. So if you haven't read that one, go get it. Or I will say that Audible has a version of that that is exceptional. You can listen to it. I think you should. If you're writing, you'll learn a lot from that. You'll learn a lot from the way the paragraphs are written in that book. A lot of times writers start out a paragraph with a key sentence and then they fill in. Vladimir sort of starts with these, I use his first name like I know, Vlad, those key sentences aren't always up top. Sometimes they're in the middle, and sometimes they sort of hit at the bottom of the paragraph and they resonate, and it's really well done. And it's prose all the way through. I mean, the book is just weirdly full of strange prose. All right. Charles Wilford, pickup, right? Oh, there was a time in the history when we're all about the pickup, with guys picking up girls and, and so forth. Women were seen as these objects and the like. And so what Wilford has done is he has employed our senses, our taste and our feel and our stuff, and sort of kind of like an omen in of itself too. And let me just read this paragraph of how he starts, and then I'll have a few comments about that. But remember, we're looking for change, and we're looking for something that piques the curiosity of the reader. You want to know what's going to happen, and I think we are going to want to know what happens after this paragraph, and I'll say why in a minute. It must have been about 11:15. A sailor came in and ordered a chili dog and coffee. I sliced a bun, jerked a frank out of the boiling water, nested it, poured a half dipper of chili over the frank, and sprinkled it liberally with chopped onions. I scribbled a check and put it by his plate. I wouldn't have recommended the unpalatable mess to a starving animal. The sailor was the only customer, and after he ate his dog, he left. That was the exact moment she entered, a small woman, hardly more than 5 feet. She had the figure of a teenage girl. Her suit was a blue tweed, smartly cut, and over her thin shoulders she wore a fur jacket, bolero length. A tiny gold circular earring clung to her small, pierced ears. Her hands and feet were small, and when she seated herself at the counter, I noticed she wasn't wearing any rings. Okay, well, the story's called Pickup. So you know that the guy is going to try to pick her up. And there, you know what? The meal that the sailor had, you got to remember, at this time in history, there was that whole woman in every port, and sailors were the Don Juans, It was like this sexual innuendo of, as soon as he, for his time, as soon as he added the word sailor. And then there's this disgusting meal that the sailor ate, and then an unpalatable mess that he wouldn't have fed a starving animal. Something bad is coming. Something bad is happening, and then in this bad circumstance, this sloppy, unpalatable mess, he sees this woman. And what does he say about her? She's small, hardly more than 5 feet, figure of a teenage girl, right? Thin shoulders, tiny gold earrings clinging to her small pierced ears. Her hands and feet were small, and when she seated herself, she didn't have any earrings. And how was she dressed? Smartly, right? So I think, we know as a reader after that first paragraph, something is going to happen. It's probably going to be bad. As a man, women and men, the readers are different. Just gender roles, I know, but forgive that part, and let's just go to the women don't want to be victimized. And she's small, and he seems to be delighting in her smallness, how little she is, how little, keep saying little teenage figure. Ugh. And then he's predatory. That's the thing. The guy is a predator. He's looking at her through the eyes of a wolf, right? He is totally looking at this girl like, and she's not wearing any rings, so, maybe he can trick her, maybe, who knows what's going to happen. But as a man, you kind of read this and immediately you want to be protective. and it makes you feel something. I guess that's the thing. No matter who you are, you just don't like what's happening, and you're left off balance. You kind of want to know what's, at least for this one, even if I don't read the whole story, I kind of want to know what's going to happen in about this situation, and that's the hook. That is the hook right there. If you can get the reader to just commit to wanting to know what the hell's going to happen after that first paragraph, you've got them. Boom. And that's what you want to do as the writer. You need it ambiguous enough, and I don't mean downright disturbing, but you know, imbalance. Put the reader in a position where they don't feel comfortable not knowing, right? That's the thing, and that's exactly what Willeford has done here. I'm not comfortable not knowing what happens to this woman. Does she turn him down? Does he victimize her? Oh, that son of a bitch, I just want to slap him, and I don't even know the story, right? And I don't even know why I feel that way. It's an amazing book, and a very popular book, and this opening, it engages the reader, gets you going, you know. Change is coming. For somebody, that change is coming. Pride and Prejudice, Jane Austen, we all know it. Let's look at the first paragraph. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. However little the feelings or views of such a man may be on his first entering a neighborhood, this truth is so well fixed in the minds of the surrounding families that he is considered as the rightful property of someone or other of their daughters. All right, so look, this is a feminist viewpoint kind of thing. I mean, there's a lot to be said about this book and the era in which it was written and how women had to rely on men and so forth. But let's just look at the first paragraph, because we import so much because we know the story. Let's just try to put that on hold for a second. Just look at this first paragraph and think to ourselves, something's happening. There's a man of means. In the setting of this story, in this place in time, he's a target. Well, you know, he is the rightful property of someone or other of their daughters. That is to say that the families, probably mostly well, let's just say the families, are interested in marrying their daughters off. And that starts off the whole thing. And so, you know, that hits us, right? Even at the time when this was written, people didn't want to think about stuff that way, probably. Now, it's disturbing. And I kind of want to know, is this man going to be, are they going to be successful, or are they not going to be successful? What's going to happen to him? Who is he? How did he get these means? What means are we talking about? Is he super wealthy, or is he just, you know, a hard-working guy? I don't know. Jane Austen obviously had a great way about her, and I wouldn't say that this particular paragraph in and of itself is her narrative hook, because I believe that there were more there were several paragraphs there at the beginning that sort of combined to build the reader's interest. And so, but this is what happened. So we know, what do we know? It's fast start. Something's going to happen. There's this omen of good fortune that she writes about, and then we know that something's going to happen, right? There's a guy, and something's going to happen because he's got means and he's a target. So I think you go to that book wanting to read a certain genre, a certain feeling, and to take the moral lessons and the futilities and frustrations of the time in as you read it, and she delivers. Okay. Speaking of omens, you know, they just say in possession of a good fortune. You know, you can obviously she meant money, but The Haunting of Hill House, Shirley Jackson, ripe with omens. Look for them as I read. Okay, so we're looking for things like light and dark and emptiness and so forth. No live organism can continue for long to exist sanely under conditions of absolute reality. Even larks and katydids are supposed by some to dream. Hill House, not sane, stood by itself against its hills, holding darkness within. It had stood so for 80 years and might stand for 80 more. Within, walls continued upright, bricks met neatly, floors were firm, the doors were sensibly shut. Silence lay steadily against the wood and stone of Hill House, and whatever walked there walked alone. So, it's an old house, and you just get this feeling, the walking there, the emptiness, the darkness, the larks and katydids, the sanity, and that calls the question to the speaker, immediately when you start bringing the sanity and haunting together, you start wondering, oh, Miss Jackson, um, how nasty. So here we just sort of get into it. I think Shirley Jackson did a great job in the beginning of this because we came to the story. It's called The Haunting of Hill House. We already know the title when we start that first paragraph. She doesn't give you much. It's an old house. No live organism can continue for long to exist sanely among conditions of absolute reality. What is she saying? She's saying that what's happening here is real, and it tests your sanity. It's fantastic. The other hook, one other hook, I just want to say this, the idea of of the secret. I'm going to tell you, the reader, something I swore not to tell anyone. That's an old hook, but you want that surprise, ambiguity, enough information to pique the curiosity, but not enough to tamp it back down, and you want to draw the reader in with a quick thing. So when you're starting those short stories, don't start with lots of description, short stories, long stories. Don't start with lots of description. Don't tell me about the grandfather clock and its alabaster handles and how it came from France and it's been nested quietly in the corner, and the room is so big and it has these kinds of paintings and these kinds of rugs and tapestries, and the desk has a pen on it that's covered in blah 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 blah. Don't do that because nobody cares. You have to work the details into the narrative. What you need to do is start the story off with change and action and something that cues the reader that today is unlike other days and something is happening, and you need to you're going to want to know this, right? Let me tell you something, and you're going to want to know this. But don't tell them, everything, because you want them to also have this feeling of, I want to discover something. How do you do that? There are a lot of tools. I've talked about a lot of different ways to approach it. The drama. I forgot the drama. Let me just fit that one in. I'm going to talk about a quick story from Jitter, right? I wouldn't be, if I didn't talk about one of our publications, I'd doing all of us a disservice. Jitter number 7. This is a quick story. I'm just going to do the first paragraph. This one is Les Boehm, right? He's a Emmy Award winner, did Taken and projects with Stephen King or Steven Spielberg. I mean, if you're old like me, Nightmare on Elm Street, he did one of those. Guy knows how to write, okay? Annie woke up screaming this morning, and it was her screaming that woke me up. I had been dreaming. In my dream, there was an egg-shaped lump in my groin. It was tender and hard under the skin. Annie was shivering, her body covered in sweat. I checked my groin, and there was no lump. What does that mean? First of all, he doesn't even tell us who Annie is and why she's screaming. I want to know. That if he just said Annie was screaming, we would be we'd be asking a lot of questions. Is it daytime, nighttime? What's happening? Annie was screaming and it woke me up. And we know that feeling. If everybody knows, the readers know. You've had that. Somebody in your house has woke up screaming. Your spouse has woke up screaming. You remember being a little kid, terrors in the night. It's terrible. It's horrible. That, I mean, right? It's terrible. And then look at the language. It's sneaky. Les, if you're watching, I know you probably will watch this. You're sneaky. The language, the sexual language here, and the lump in my groin, egg-shaped, right? An egg. It's a fertility thing. Tender and hard under my skin. And Annie's shivering, covered in sweat and stuff. Is it sexual? I don't know, right? We don't know. Is that an omen of something that's coming? Is there a fertility problem in the future? Who's Annie? Why is she screaming? What are you going to do about it? And what the hell? You're just suddenly in just really a couple of sentences, let's say a handful of words, you are, as the reader, in a weird place. You're suddenly immersed in an uncomfortable spot, with these characters, and you kind of want to know more. First of all, who the hell's Annie? And you want to know why is she screaming? Was it a bad dream? Was there a person in her house? And what the hell is the lump? What's going to happen with the groin? Why did you tell me that? It's weird. It's great because it's ambiguous and thought-provoking, and you just kind of want, as the reader, you're thinking, well, let me just go on and, I haven't committed yet. Let me just go another paragraph, see if I figure out where this is going. Am I still interested? That's the magic. That's the magic, because you got them go on to the next paragraph. You hook. You're reeling them in. And next thing you know, they're loving your story. Les, way to go on that. We really appreciate you being part of our publications. Hey, if you want to know what happens to Annie, let's see here. Theater 7, Prolific Press. Go get it. All right. So build that curiosity, be a little ambiguous, use one of the tools, consider the omens, the surprise, the change, and the fast starts. Imagine the consumer of your short story being somebody who is inundated with media all the time, so you need that quick start. I think that is very important these days. If you want to hook the reader, you have to demonstrate right up top. Today is a day like no other day, and something's changing or something good is coming, and the reader's going to want to know more. You have to present them with something that makes them want to know more, and not too much description off the top. When you develop your characters, you slip little bits of information into the narrative. Don't write a paragraph telling people how someone looked and what they were wearing. Don't do that. All right, I hope that helps, and thank you for checking in. I appreciate all of you so much, and I'll be back next time with some new video and hopefully something else that's interesting to you.